Hey, hey,
Good
hey.
morning. It's Cooler Talk with Rhonda and Cynthia. And we're going to talk about gut feelings this morning and that little feeling in your gut that says something is off. So,
Mhm.
I have this little sign here and it says, never discredit your gut instinct. You are not paranoid. Your body can pick up on bad vibrations. If something deep inside of you says something is not right about a person or a situation,
Mhm.
trust it. Trust it. One of the first things,
Amen.
yes, one of the first things that came to my mind was many moons ago when I lived in Cleveland, Ohio. Um, I was driving home from work one night and it was late. I was tired. I was a road warrior, and I decided to take a shortcut through the city. And this little voice just flashed in me, no, don't go that way. Take the other route. Well, I didn't listen. So
Oh,
I was in the inner city. I pulled up to this light too close to the car in front of me, and three guys and a brick came through my passenger window. Obviously, I survived, and I had my briefcase open and unlocked. So they grabbed my briefcase, but everything inside went out, fell out, and I found my wallet and on the street. So that was my little experience with never of trusting my instincts. I try to listen. I haven't learned to pay attention just yet.
uh-huh.
But I've had things like that happen over the years, and it's like, when am I gonna learn to start listening to my gut?
Right. I'm so glad that you shared that because I think, we as a society, and maybe this is more so in Western society, I'm not really familiar with others, but um, I think in society, like we feel like we have these commitments, and these commitments can be or obligations, and really they're obligations to our calendars and our routines, but they're not necessarily like, let's say, they're not necessarily always aligned with, say, a spiritual commitment or an emotional commitment, and so we kind of allow that to trump what what it is, like to trump those other body sensations, and I think our bodies and the cells in our bodies are very wise, and they understand, like, the commitments that we have, but they're sort of like, danger is around the corner. That's why I love this example, and you probably just tuned it out because you're like, I always go down this road, this is the fastest way home, or
Mhm.
whatever it is. But you don't know, maybe that impulse could have also led you to, the pot of gold at the end of the rainbow, or like, you just don't know.
Yeah,
um, and I
yeah,
think that's a mindset shift that we have to kind of
yeah,
recognize that.
yeah. And a lot of it has to do with paying attention to your surroundings.
Yeah.
Like my probably one of my most favorite jobs of all time. I worked for a check printer, and I visited throughout Ohio and Western New York. I visited hundreds of bank branches
Uh-huh.
for to do sales training on selling checks and
Uh-huh.
uh, making sure their materials and things were updated. And the plant was in Buffalo, so once a month we would always have a sales meeting. And I noticed that the bigwigs were coming around a little more often than they normally would.
Uh-huh.
And I eventually was transferred from Ohio to New York. That's what brought me to New York State was a job transfer.
Mm-hmm.
So when this happened, had I was in the plant more often than I normally would have been, being 3.5 hours away. And I just noticed there. Oh, I wonder. just noticed. And I just made a comment out of the blue one day to one of my coworkers, and I just said, "I think the company's for sale."
Uh-huh.
And sure enough,
Yep.
within probably within 90 days of
Mm-hmm.
me making that observation, that the
Mm-hmm.
company was sold and just about all of us were laid off.
Yeah.
We merged into another company that was in a similar business, but eventually that plant was closed. We all lost our jobs through layoff.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Um,
Mm-hmm.
and it was one of those situations that, well, if I had been paying attention and not so settled in my ways, I would have started an active effort to go out and find something different, which in a way I did, because I sold Mary Kay Cosmetics for about 11 years. And that was around that time when I got started,
There you go.
have a little backup. So um, it's
You
interesting.
know, how did you get started with Mary Kay? And in a way, what I'm really kind of asking is, was there maybe like an impulse or like something that, like, was it kind of a surprise, or like somebody presented it to you and you're like, oh, hey, this sounds cool?
No, I had been thinking that it might not be a bad idea to have a backup plan.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And I had extra time. I had my hours were usually, the banks closed at like 4 o'clock in those
Uh-huh.
days
Right.
in the
Right.
afternoon. I had some extra time and I started pursuing some options.
Mm-hmm.
And I happened to run into this girl and we struck up a conversation. And I said, I'm going to do something on the side where I don't have to work for somebody else. Because, when you're an employee,
Yeah.
you know, they call the shots.
Yes, they do.
You do a lot of negotiating, but they call the shots. It's their business.
Yep.
And they call the shots. There's
Yep.
not, unless you work for a manager or in a department or in a creative situation like you are, there's not a lot of flexibility. Historically, it's been, here's what I want you to do and when I want you to have it done.
Right.
Pretty
Right.
much in a nutshell. So that 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 was when my entrepreneurial spirit started. Uh,
Uh-huh.
but the traveling was getting to me too. I was relocated from Buffalo. Then I got moved up to the Rochester area, physically
Mm-hmm.
relocated, and so my travel was all over the place, and
Mm-hmm.
I was starting to burn out from it,
Yep.
because
Yep.
most of my career I've been in isolating jobs.
Mm-hmm.
Um, in the car, no cell phones back then. We didn't have, couldn't pick up the phone like we can now in the last 20 years or so. But um, I have found that when I pay attention to my gut, I mean, I can use in a couple employer situations, and my gut would just tell me that there was something off about a person.
Right.
And that gut feeling always told me, just pay attention to what's
Mm-hmm.
going on, what they
Mm-hmm.
say, how they say it, whether they, do the actions match the behavior.
Yep.
Um, and then a situation came up just this week. A few months ago, I get this call, like months ago. I get contacted by somebody that I used to, a business associate.
Uh-huh.
And some I remember thinking this particular business associate, and other people had expressed it verbally, but I didn't, that they were kind of like full of, you know what?
Uh-huh.
And I'm like, I'm just going to keep observing, because there were mixed messages that frequently
Mm-hmm.
mixed messages. And if we were in meetings, if one of us were commenting to another, the person would crumple up a piece of paper and throw it at us. And
Mm-hmm.
And I called this person out on it. They didn't want anything to do with me because I called them out on it.
Mm-hmm.
So out of the blue, this was a startup. I've been involved in 2 startups, and ended up it became very, very successful. So I thought it was odd a few months ago getting contacted by this person. Well, this group has created a wall of fame type of thing, and I'm going to be honored. And since you were part of that success, I want you to be there.
Uh-huh.
So, okay, I was just, I don't know, something just didn't sit right with that about me. It
Mm-hmm.
just spoke. Anyway, so now it's coming up in a couple weeks. So another coworker a friend, we've become friends and we've stayed in touch over time. I sent a little message the other day. I said, because this person made it like made it out to be a big deal, which it would for him be a big deal.
Right.
I really want to be there and, have you there because you were part of it and so on and so forth. We're going to be sending out invitations. And so I contacted them. Hey, did you get your invitation yet?
Uh-huh.
Well, no, I haven't. Let me message him and find out what the deal was. Well, hey, is this thing still going on? Oh, well, because of COVID and the fire marshal, now they're only letting so many people in. And
Uh-huh.
if you want to drive 4 hours to attend, if there's room, we can let you in.
Yeah, no. Thank you.
So I was like, why did this not surprise me?
Mm-hmm. Because you already knew.
I already knew intuitively.
Yeah.
I already knew. And, some other little indicators came up. And I'm just going, oh, so do you want to drive 4 hours and just maybe get in to build somebody else's ego up?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And I think in any sales organization, you definitely want to honor the people that have made you successful. That
Sure.
I'm not criticizing that at all, but it
Yeah.
was just the way it was approached.
Yeah. And then like
It was
not
with
sort
all
of
this
like,
preliminary stuff, and then then you find this out, but you don't bother contacting the people that
you
so
reached
you
us.
just kind of screwed yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Your
Mm-hmm.
credibility just went down the toilet.
Mm-hmm.
You
Mm-hmm.
know, okay, yeah, okay, you did some nice things for me. Yes, but I didn't appreciate having rolled up paper thrown at me hit me in the face during a meeting just because I made a comment to someone next to me.
Right. Right.
Type of thing. So um I don't name names. I'm not gonna name names, and people know who they are. And that's all it just really disturbed me, So
Oh.
and I, other people experience these things, and this is why I talk about it. Because that is such a negative thing to do to people. That's
Mm-hmm.
like, well, I want to make sure all of these people are here for me.
Right. Well,
But
let's
now
even
that the
rewind.
people, yeah, now that the people that are going to be there that I really want to be there, I don't need these other people.
Right. And
You
well, but
get kind
again,
of the message.
yeah, but even rewinding back further, like the way that you interact with people is not throwing paper at the faces of people who are, in a meeting. Regardless of whether you're trying to get somebody's attention, you can just say like, "Hey, Rhonda, are are you with us?" Or call them out. But throwing
Exactly.
paper at people, I actually had a math teacher who used to throw chalk at like kids who weren't sort of paying attention. And I have to tell you, like, not that I was always kind of an attentive student. I mean, I was always like a middling student. Like I didn't sort of shine at the top. I didn't really sort of like create problems. I always sort of skated through the middle, especially at that age. But I have to say, like, attending that class was a bit of a traumatic thing for me. Like,
Yeah.
I used to be worried about potentially being bopped on the head by a piece of chalk because, maybe he missed the guy behind me or something,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
so I guess, but that feeds back into, you feel that throughout your body, and your
Yes.
body does react to it even when you're not under fire.
Yeah.
And those signals are visceral. They've been implanted in our
Yeah.
brains, and our brains release the hormones that create those
Yeah.
sorts of fight and flight
Yeah.
responses, because it's trying to tell you, like, you
Yeah.
don't move that way, move
Yeah.
away.
Yeah.
Um, but
And
then
it's
we
hard
teach
to,
ourselves to ignore that.
yeah, it's hard to trust your instincts because if you're around uh toxic types of environments
Uh-huh.
that you have it actually has the impact of having you question yourself.
Yeah. Yeah.
When you know down deep what's right,
Yes.
but being around that toxic types of environments has you questioning yourself and questioning your value
Yes.
as a human being. You
Yes.
know, okay,
And
maybe I didn't make you rich, but I still am a valuable, worthwhile human being. I
right.
had some part in there somewhere, but why did you have to make that call in the first place? I mean, for what purpose was that than to build your own ego up? I mean, that
Right.
was my immediate thought. And I did respond at first, like saying, I'm very surprised to get
Hear from you.
contacted by you like
Mhm.
this.
Mhm.
I did make a comment that
Uh-huh.
this was kind of because it was so out of the ordinary, and I took it as a self-serving
Mhm.
um action.
Mhm.
And then when there wasn't the follow-up, then sincerity came into play, and
Mhm.
credit and I just got validated on some other observations I had made.
Yeah. Well, I think maybe if there is a sort of a lesson to be drawn from this story, is that your gut actually indicates good and bad. And probably the gut trusting that we do is usually it's about warning us. And if
Yeah.
we don't trust that gut, then
Mhm.
how can we trust the gut that's like pointing us in the direction of like what is good for us and what's potentially an opportunity?
Yeah.
So it's like use those lessons where it's like, oh, I should have, what, I had that feeling before turning left that I shouldn't have.
Yeah.
Why didn't I just go straight like my gut was telling me? And again, being able to use those lessons in order to trust your gut even for the positive things that can come down the road, because
Exactly. Yeah.
it's really like your body is in constant communication
It's
with
like
the environment around you.
it's like sometimes you don't want to believe that gut feel. I don't want to believe this.
Yeah.
I
Well,
just it's
and like I
form of
said, it's
yeah,
codified in our culture. Like
yeah.
this math teacher, he was an authority figure, and I was
Mm,
taught to behave, like
yeah,
keep your head down, don't be a troublemaker. And
yeah,
so I kept my head down. I wouldn't speak up again. I didn't tell my parents, hey, I've got a math teacher. He hasn't thrown chalk at me, but it's still wrong that he's throwing chalk at other people. I am
mhm,
suffering or victimized by this just because, who knows? I could be next, So I do think we should start to like notice those gut feelings,
yeah,
and maybe train ourselves to say like, what can I do just to kind of like highlight, put a spotlight on this and be like, is this right? You know,
yeah,
like even like you said in the moment that like he called you and you called him out on it, which I think is awesome. It means that you're starting that dialogue where you say, "Hey, I'm surprised that you'd contact me. I mean, you know, you've had success. I think that's great, but we weren't
Yeah.
exactly like,
Right.
Yeah.
So, the more I learn about codependency and toxic
Toxicity.
relationships,
Yeah.
the more I hone in on things like this,
Yeah.
and I learn about narcissism, but I don't think this person's a narcissism. I just think they're self-centered.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean they're a narcissist, but
Yeah.
I just so in the old days, I would just stuff things like this, these little observations I make
Yeah.
and the feeling I had associated with it. And now I just call it out.
It's good.
And it's because I have found other people experience this too.
Yeah.
And I just want you all to know you're not crazy. That, and yes, when you feel these feelings,
Mm-hmm.
my first go to is I don't want to believe it.
Right. Yeah.
Because I want to think that everybody is loving, giving, forthright, honest, and uh, so on and so forth. And human nature is just not that way. I mean,
Well,
I'm not even pointing fingers. It's not how human nature is.
yeah, and forgetting about if you kind of like bring it back to just the part of human nature that you can control, it's yourself.
Right.
And I think when you can call it out in the moment and just sort of say like, hey, that's surprising. I'm surprised to hear from you after all of these months of not hearing from you, is like, what's really behind this story or something.
Right.
The point being that by calling it out, you're really also communicating to your body to who you really are, that you do trust it and you don't have to file away that toxicity in your body. That basically you're saying, hey, that negativity does not belong in here. So it can stay out there.
Exactly.
And it also invites that person to say, oh my goodness, like maybe that person would say, you know what, I actually have the best of intentions. I didn't even realize that I was neglecting our relationship or whatever. And if that's true, like I think most people when they're called out, the ones who really are well-intentioned will be like, oh, I'm surprised to be called out because I never had ill intent. And the ones who know that they're kind of like asking for more than they deserve, or like that they have really sort of honored that relationship for, they'll probably be defensive. Who knows? It might get ugly.
That's right.
Because
they can't handle the truth. They don't
right.
They don't want to accept it. So
right.
Yeah, and the bottom line is that we can only control what we say, do, and think ourselves.
Yeah.
We have no control over how others are going to respond. But that was self-caring for me to say.
Yeah.
Yes. Well, I'm really surprised to hear from you about that. About
yes.
this. So. And I felt very, very good about that.
Yes.
And there are days where I think, I really don't have a voice. I mean, there's so many other people out there that experience the same things, have the same feelings, and they do a much better job than I do in expressing themselves. And but then again, it doesn't. Why am I discounting myself?
Exactly.
That's
baby steps.
Baby steps for God. I hope I can figure this out before it's too late.
And if it's too late, you're in heaven in the clouds, living a whole new life with crazy angels and.
Oh boy. Well, I believe there is only goodness on the other side. I
Yeah.
truly believe that. I was raised to believe that. And, reading people's testimonials over the years confirms it.
Yeah.
And so that's what I choose to believe. That, you know, anyway, we're here for a reason. That crazy stuff happens, but it's like, which wolf do you want to feed? Do you want to feed the negative wolf, or do you want to feed the positive, productive wolf, or the
Right.
negative, destructive wolf? So,
Well, again, your gut, will kind of lead you to the right direction. And if it's not your gut, it's your nose or, whatever it is. So, if it smells like a rotten fish, don't eat it.
yeah, you got a point. So we'll share that little clip again.
Yeah.
As soon as I remember, there it is. Okay.
And
So
read it
bring
out
that up
again.
again. Never ever discredit
Oh.
your gut instinct. You are not paranoid. Your body can pick up on bad vibrations. If something deep inside of you says something is not right about a person or a situation, trust it. And I borrowed that from Simple Reminders.
Yes, it is a simple reminder and a powerful one.
Yeah.
And
So
remember that your gut can lead you away from something bad, but it can also lead you towards something good. So trust it.
that's right. And with that thought, we're going to conclude our cooler talk for this week. Welcome back, Cynthia. I missed you. And sending love, patience, and kindness your direction. We'll see you
Yes.
the next time.
Bye. See you next week.